On November 14th, 2018, 9 brave people accomplished the first ever kite crossing in open waters between the islands of Mauritius and Réunion. "203 kilometers of open ocean, 9.5 hours of surfing. It was simultaneously both easy and incredibly difficult." Preparations for the crossing began long before it. The idea was first proposed by Konstantin Aksionov in March of 2018, better known in the kitesurfing community as Carlito, an athlete that crossed the Bering Strait in 2011 and set 3 world records. The concept of this kind of relay race has long been up in the air, since in theory you could cover unlimited distance this way, so long as the wind keeps blowing. The crossing was meant to shine a light into the future and prove that long distances can be covered via relay race. The 200-kilometer distance between Mauritius and Réunion is merely training grounds. From then on, you can go as far as 800 kilometers to Madagascar, or even commit to a journey around the globe. The objective was not to set any records. As Vladimir Branin, one of the relay kite surfers, said, "We just wanted a ride," since one of the goals was to prove that long distance in open ocean can be covered not only by professional athletes, but by amateurs as well. However, the idea would have been left at the concept stage if not for Vladimir Popov's determination, the director of the Sodis travel agency. He became fascinated by the concept of the crossing, and Sodis became the main organizer for the relay race, alongside the Mauritius Kite Club, K&B Watersport Club. Around the same time, the first sponsor of the project appeared, the biggest network of hotels on Mauritius, Beachcomber. Soon after, the crossing entered government interest and gained support with the Ministry of Tourism for Mauritius and Russian diplomat Konstantin Klimovsky, stationed on Mauritius. Konstantin's help was invaluable, as he was individually responsible for sorting out many of the bureaucratic concerns. Prior to this point, nobody took the concept of the crossing seriously, as the project was only given a green light after Konstantin spoke with the Prime Minister of Mauritius. As a result, the crossing was dedicated to the 50th anniversary of Mauritius's independence. Of course, the participants weren't the first kite surfers to venture out from Mauritius to Réunion. Prior to the crossing, the journey was covered by professional athletes. However, the team behind the crossing wanted to accomplish something different. A team crossing, a relay race. This is precisely the idea behind the world record that has been set. There have not been instances of such a relay race before, and no practice of swapping out kites in open water. This was also the cause of many difficulties during the crossing, which the team had to prepare for. When the time came for a surfer to swap out, the boat had to approach the surfer, who would then get on board and transfer the chicken loop to their teammate's gear. The surfer swapping in would then attach themselves to the board and quickly jump into the water. At least, that's how the procedure is done if nothing goes wrong. But of course, often the whole process would have to happen off the boat and in open water, which is a serious concern given the high rate of shark attacks around Réunion Island. Special magnetic transmitters that attach to the surfboards were bought for the crossing to drive away sharks, but they didn't stop at that, and roughly halfway through the journey, they started shocking the surfers themselves with electricity. As a result, they had to be switched off. During the swap-outs, the surfers were also covered by Michael, a Réunion kite surfer. He wore a special wetsuit covered in white and black stripes to mimic the colour scheme of a venomous fish. If strong waves forced the surfers to swap kites in the water, Michael would jump into the water with a mask and watch out for sharks. Thankfully, no sharks were spotted throughout the crossing, even near Réunion. In August of 2018, Konstantin Aksionov, Artem Belyaev, Vladimir Popov and his son trained in the Baltic for the upcoming journey. On that day, the wind was incredibly gusty and strong, and the Ministry of Emergency Situations even had to warn residents to stay at home. Despite the cautions, the team raised their kites in Kronstad at King Winch and ventured out into the Gulf of Finland, going past the outer side of the dam, through dam openings and finishing in St. Petersburg. The training was aimed to be only a couple of hours, but ended up lasting much longer at 4 hours and 40 minutes, 62 kilometers downstream, which turned out to be great practice. The participants realised that freestyle surfboards, great for riding down chop, would not be practical for the crossing, where speed was more important than manoeuvrability. Equally, the radios used in the training often lost signal once the kiters got spread out, so special elongated boards and long-range radios were ordered for the trip. But the difficulties didn't end there. For example, a speedboat capable of travelling at 40 km per hour was required to accompany the kiters. As it turned out, all of the boats on Mauritius were very slow, designed for diving or fishing. The speedboat that was initially going to be used was also pulled back a month before the crossing. But even this issue was resolved, practically in the last moment. The crew managed to secure a speedy Volga. Afterwards, to avoid the initial plan of swapping kites out in the open waters, the decision was made to rent a second inflatable boat, the Zodiac. It needed an experienced captain, one familiar with the open ocean and capable of travelling through high waves at high speed. The Mauritians didn't make the cut, as none were experienced in traversing the ocean in such a boat. In the end, it was captained by Andrei Goloshapov from St. Petersburg, who masterfully overcame all the difficulties of the crossing. Then came November 12, 2018, the original planned date for the crossing. However, the wind was practically non-existent. On November 13th, it was very weak. An evening assembly was held in the Dinarabin Beachcomber Bar Hotel, the headquarters for the crossing. Tablets with maps and wind forecasts were laid out on the table, and the atmosphere was unnervingly serious. It was decided that the next morning the team would have to head out, as there was a small probability that the wind could be strong enough. On the morning of November 14th, the relay race from Mauritius to Réunion began. The participants were reaching for success, and journalists waved them goodbye before travelling to the airport to meet them in the evening on Réunion Island. On the day of the crossing, the wind was weak, and faced directly down the path of the journey, which was a significant issue for the kite surfers. After about 3 hours, it became even weaker. There was so little wind that surfing was practically impossible. The kite straps often got loose, and the kiters would fall into the water. Commander Carlito made the decision to place the lightest and most experienced kite surfers to lead the way. Even they struggled not to drop the kites into the water while not getting blasted by the wind. Everyone was worried. If the wind weakened by even a single knot, the expedition would have to be cancelled. And so, up until 2 PM, the surfers had to make do with the kites that barely flew and fight back the lack of wind, refusing to give up and spinning the kite loops like fans. Eventually it started blowing harder, and Fred and Bart gave their kites to the other participants. Approaching Réunion, it began raining and soon a storm broke out. The visibility was so low that the kiters sometimes disappeared out of view for several minutes. Losing one of the team members was a serious fear for all participants, but it all turned out well, and in the last 2 hours the surfers finally got really good wind, so much so that the boats could hardly keep up. Vladimir Popov was chosen to cross the finish line, as he was instrumental to it happening. As luck would have it, the boat somehow had stored a bottle of champagne, and everyone happily partook in the celebration. The crossing from Mauritius to Réunion is now planned to be done annually. It's difficult, but future amateur athletes can definitely pull it off, and it's a great adventure to be had. A lot of people wish to visit Réunion, and while some travel there by yacht, the chosen ones get to the island by kite. Surfing near the beach is, of course, one kind of experience, but seeing the shoreline on the horizon, or not seeing land at all, is an entirely different one.